Hi, my name is Ken Oliver, and I'm here to show you some really amazing techniques using Colorburst. I'm not sure if you've heard of Colorburst before, but Colorburst is amazing. It's watercolor, and it's in a little bottle, and it's not a cake, it's not a tube, it's a powder. And because it's a powder, you can get really, really intense colors to use in your scrapbooking, backgrounds, and card making, and in mixed media projects. And I want to share a few ways to get some incredible color backgrounds that you're gonna love. The most basic technique with Colorburst is called Spritz and Sprinkle. And I'm gonna spritz my watercolor paper with water. I'm gonna give it a really nice spritz of water. So I've got water pretty much like all over my paper. And then I'm just gonna give it a nice sprinkle of Colorburst and watch what happens. It'll blow your mind. Look how that color just burst all over your background. And we can add in a little more color. And don't ever be afraid to use color, but what I would tell you is try to stay within color families. So if you're gonna use warm colors like yellow, orange, red, stick to yellow, orange, and red and warm colors. If you wanna use cool colors like violet, blues, and greens, work with those. So we've got a beautiful background. I could leave it like this, or I could actually give it another spritz of water and develop that color a little bit more. And look how cool that is. It's beautiful. Now we're gonna dry it. You could die cut that into pieces for handmade cards, or you could also use that for a really colorful scrapbook layout background. And just like that, you have a beautiful background that would be great for card making. So the first technique I showed you was Spritz and Sprinkle using warm colors. Now I'm gonna show you Sprinkle and Spritz, and I'm gonna use cool colors. So I'm gonna take a little bit of Colorburst Ultramarine Blue, and these are all cool colors. And I'm just gonna sprinkle a tiny bit of powder on my watercolor paper. And you can see there's hardly anything there. You might not even be able to see it, but trust me, that is packed with color. And I'm gonna use some sap green. This is gonna give us a beautiful background that looks like ocean water or like beautiful leaves. I'm gonna use some chartreuse. Chartreuse is one of my favorite colors of Colorburst. It's the color of buds when they unfurl in the spring. It is really lush. I'm gonna use a little bit of Terre Verte green. It's a deep, rich green. And you can see I'm just sprinkling a little bit of powder on my watercolor paper. When I spritz this with water, you're not gonna believe how this color develops. This sprinkle and spritz technique will give you more of a splashed look. So I've got my powder all sprinkled on my paper, and now I'm just gonna hit it with a mist of water. And I'm gonna give it maybe 2 or 3 squirts of water. And see how that color develops? Isn't that beautiful? So just like that, we've created a beautiful cool color background by sprinkling and spritzing. And isn't that beautiful? We have a beautiful, cool color background that would be great for handmade cards. So the first couple of techniques I showed you was spritzing and sprinkling and sprinkling and spritzing. And I recommended in these two that you would stay within color families using either warm colors or cool colors. But what I want to show you now is how to layer color on top of each other to get some really dramatic effects. So here in my warm example with warm colors, I'm going to come back in and add some cool colors like violet and green and chartreuse and maybe a little bit of blue. And this is already dry. So all I'm going to do is come back and sprinkle in a little bit of color, and a little bit goes a long way. Colorburst is super, super concentrated. So I'm going to tap in some violet, maybe a little indigo. We have 30 colors now, so you have lots and lots of options. I'm going to give it some chartreuse. And what this will let you do is layer colors on top of each other and keep your look really nice and clean without going muddy. Sometimes watercolor can get muddy. This way you'll always have beautiful, clean, brilliant backgrounds. And then on this one, I can come back and add yellow to really brighten that up. I can add another color called gamboge, which is the most beautiful golden color you'll ever see. Historically, gamboge was made with resin, that was ground and made into paint. And orange will really pop on this too, so I'm going to add a little bit of orange around. Now watch this. I'm just going to give this all a nice spritz of water. And boom, those contrasting colors are just going to like pop out in front of your eyes. And it's going to be really super clear since the first layer we did is already dry. So now we've learned how to layer colors to get those really dramatic effects that you would use in Galaxy cards or other handmade cards. It's really, really beautiful. One of the things that makes color bursts so brilliant is the paper I'm using. You want to make sure that you're using a very bright white watercolor paper, and I've developed a special watercolor paper that is actually two-sided, but the thing that makes this so unique is it's ultra bright white. You may not know this, but watercolor is actually transparent. And one of the things that makes watercolor really bright is if you work on a white bright surface, because light reflects through the watercolor and off of the paper, and that's what makes it so brilliant. So this paper is designed specially for color bursts because it's ultra bright white, and you'll love this paper for painting and card making because one side is texture, and if you like to stamp, the reverse side is smooth, so you have a really great smooth image for stamping. I want to show you one more technique now that we've got these beautiful backgrounds, and that is removing color. Watercolor is interactive with water, so you can actually change it around after you've got something painted. And I want to remove some color to give some beautiful white bubbles or spots inside these backgrounds. And to do that, you can do it a few ways. I'm going to, with a spritz bottle, spritz a few drops of water right onto my background. Or you can take a paintbrush and pick up water on a paintbrush and make drops of water like that. You can very deliberately pick up drops of water and drop water on there like so, if you want some big drops. This is going to be really cool when you see that, because what's happening now is the water and the color burst pigment are interacting, and the water is actually lifting up pigment. Another fun way you can do this is put some water in your hand like so, and then clap over it, and that makes lots of tiny little sparks of water. So we're gonna let those sit for about a minute or two. It really takes some time, and let that sit for a couple of minutes, and then I'll show you how to remove that water and reveal these beautiful white dots on this watercolor background. So I've waited just a couple of minutes to let that pigment and water interact, and what's happening, the water is actually picking the pigment up off the paper. So to reveal those beautiful white dots, I'm going to take my roll of paper towel, and just like this, I'm going to roll across it just one time to reveal those beautiful white bright dots. And look how cool that is. We made almost like a, what would you call, like a bubble background by spritzing and sprinkling and then dropping some extra water on after it was dried and removing that to get that really cool bubbly texture. How awesome is that? So now that you've learned how to make this beautiful background, join me for one of my later videos where we'll learn how to use this background to make a beautiful handmade Galaxy card. Thanks for joining me to learn these new color burst techniques. I know you're gonna love how you can use color bursts in your card making, scrapbooking, and mixed media projects.